Welcome back to coffee number 5. Today, I was thinking, I had a problem actually. I had one of my clients, has a wonderful brand, absolutely gorgeous brand. I'm so proud of the work we did. But my client decided that she wants to be the face of the brand. So I got an issue there. I was like, it's hard. First of all, I wasn't hired to brand a person. I was hired to brand a product, which is really, really different. And also, it's like if you are branding a person, you are making a different strategy than branding a product. It's completely different things. And branding both, oh my God, it's a lot of work. So today, I hope I'm gonna say this right. I invited Vinnie Potestivo.
That's it, Potestivo. Yeah, that's right.
Welcome, Vinnie.
Yeah.
Welcome so much. I'm excited to have you here. I mean, I'm gonna ask you to tell a little bit about yourself because you did so much. You work with so many of my favorite shows and people. So please tell us a little more about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so cool to hear that you know some of my projects, which I always love, sort of just in terms of moving forward. It's so cool to see how many of my projects have actually touched people worldwide. I'm born and raised in Staten Island. I got my start in television here in New York. I'm still here in New York and Brooklyn. And in the mid to late 90s, I started working in television, and I worked at Fox News Network, which actually helped me get a job at MTV News, which actually got my foot in the door. And in the late 90s, a man named Rod Asa and myself started the talent development department at MTV. Which was the idea that, yes, there was show development, but no one was really organizing the conversation around the strengths of the talent that were passing in and out of MTV. So that was my first job. So I'm so lucky to have spent the first 10 years of my career launching talent brands like Beyonce and Mandy Moore, Carmen Electra, Jessica Simpson, Ashton Kutcher, Nas and Khalees. I can list a bunch of names. The Osbournes.
Amazing. And also I was realizing that we crossed paths. I was at Fox Latin America also in the early 2000s. So
I love that. Yeah.
And I was doing some things with MTV too. So we crossed a lot of paths.
That's cool. Well, what they both had in common was they were in the process of turning the camera around and showing the audience. Both of those networks, before most of the other television networks that were out there, were actually had the cameras faced at the audience. So the audience was watching the audience. The show I worked on for Fox News was Hannity and Combs. So it was a polarizing conversation, both sides of the debate, and an audience that was equally polarizing. And I loved helping people tell their story. And at MTV, I loved that I got to not just help artists tell their story, but literally give them cameras to change their realities. When I got to MTV in the late 90s, we were auditioning a group of women to be VJs. We saw there was a trend in the female teen singer. So we met with Jessica Simpson, we met with Mandy Moore. Mandy Moore is amazing. And Mandy Moore became she became a VJ on MTV for a long time. Now, you have to be able to read a little bit of the copy live and talk live. And there's a lot of things going. Hosting isn't for everybody. Hosting wasn't right for Jessica Simpson. But reality TV was. That's what she needed to be able to tell people who she was. Yeah, so it was so cool that I got to help them.
She was so good. She was like able to shine through reality TV because it was non-scripted, which was great.
And where most celebrities shine is on the red carpet. What I like to do is help find ways for people to impress. And what Jessica was able to do was, shine off the red carpet. And for the first time in television, consistently, which we'll talk about, because in branding,
yes,
consistency is absolutely key to personal branding.
There are all the people that also bury their careers in reality TV.
Sure. Well, you're only known for your last hit. How about that? Is that fair? So
yes.
So you might have hosted a TV show, but if you become the president of America, you'll forever be known as that role instead of, the previous role. Or if you started in the real world and became an actor or an actress, most likely you don't even remember that these people started, in reality. But you're sort of known, or Cardi B, someone who started in reality TV, but she's more known for her music now. So you're known for your last hit.
Yes.
But that's arbitrary because that gets down into audiences, and there are many audiences.
Yeah,
that,
absolutely. Well, that's why it's so important to niche and to get
yeah,
know who your audience is, and even being a show in the wrong network can affect that personality because it's not going to the right audience.
yeah. And it was cool. By the way, it was cool working with artists who in the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s were creating albums and releasing albums. It's very similar to us creators now who have to make something and then put it out, which is kind of a new process for us, to be really honest, because up until say the last 5 or maybe even 10 years, if you wanted content, put out to the masses, you had to go to television or film, or there were traditional platforms that you had to go to. And that's what brought my attention to this side of the camera. And for the last 15 years, I've been helping business owners become housewives on Bravo, have many, many, many series on Bravo where I help to find business owners who had a unique skill set, whether it was Pregnant in Heels, Chef Roble and Co. I can give the list of amazing entrepreneurs that I've helped create their brands by the use of media. And that all stems from the personal brand. And I love founder-led brands too. I should point that out. Like I have awesome skincare clients and some a lot of financial strategy, like a lot of media strategy, so a lot of founder-led people, founder-led business owners that I work with who I really enjoy working with too. So it's not just celebrities, and it applies to all. So I'm excited to share some of them with you.
Yeah, let's talk about branding, because as I started the podcast, it's so different. It's so hard to have to brand two things, first of all, because it's like, what comes first, the egg or the chicken or the egg? So my feeling is that you need to be very consistent always, and you need to start somewhere. Where do we start?
Yes. So I think the chicken came before the egg, by the way. I think the chicken was turned like from dinosaur into chicken and then chicken into egg. And then that cycle happened. But and I point that out because we are the chickens. The eggs are our businesses because we make many of them and we nurture them, and the strongest ones, the best ones survive. Sometimes the loudest ones survive. Sometimes the ones that we neglect the most don't survive. So I really love the analogy of chicken and egg, but we have to acknowledge that we are the chickens. And where does it start? For example, when you're having the font conversation, some people like to talk about branding in a very tactile, physical way. So, okay, let's start with fonts. How do you describe the font? Is the font happy, uplifting, energizing? Because these are traits that you might use to describe yourself.
Yep.
And I take a moment when I'm working, especially with founder-led businesses, where the personal brand and the business brand have to work so closely in tune with one another because they're dependent on each other. I'm asking you to trust my company because I'm showing you how trustworthy its founder is. So that's a very different process than, like, as you said earlier, just having a faceless company with multiple influencers and multiple faces, which requires a different way to show maybe that you are trustworthy. Maybe you would say, we have so many people, that's why we're trustworthy. So you're no longer focusing, on the personal brand.
Well, I think that you just said a keyword that is focusing, and it's about, we only can concentrate so much energy. There is only so much you can do. And it's also for a person who is a CEO or the face of the company. So you need to decide what are you going to do first. I mean, you need to be very consistent, because consistency is what is going to be like a massive attack to your personal brand. Inconsistency is going to be like attacking to your personal brand or your own brand, because if you decide, oh, I'm going to be working really hard in promoting my brand, I'm going to work with influencers, I'm going to be but you know what, now I changed my mind, I want to be doing everything, and I want to be using all my budget just for promoting myself. So there was like a misuse. First, it's a great confusion.
Yeah.
The brand is brandless. And also it's like you use your resources and your strategy, and then everything goes to trash.
Yeah, it's a mismanagement of energy, right? And probably because you mismanage, because that person may have mismanaged energy, they may see the entire project as a failure instead of that one small step. And what I try to do when I'm helping people launch personal brands or business brands is try to see success early in the beginning part of the journey, small or large. I think that it's important for people to get a taste of success. It's inspiring. It will keep you up late at night, and it will keep you on the grind and will keep you moving. I've seen too much failure come from lack of money or time. And like you said earlier, there's only so much you can do now. And you even said it best. You said, what's the thing you're going to do first? So so two things. One is I want to acknowledge energy, right? So take inventory. The first thing I would do if I'm looking at myself as a brand, I would take inventory. What are the things I enjoy doing? What are the things I enjoy showing up on? What are the words that are associated with that? The verbs, the action words. What are the adjectives? Like give me really rich definitions, and because I think it's very important to be impeccable and articulate in what you're getting across, because that's how you can stand out. That's how you can impress. And I'm not saying use big words, the smallest words probably, right? Those, in fact, I think they say people who use big words sometimes are trying to project like they know what they're saying with the, it's an insecurity, I think.
Sometimes it comes across like trying too hard.
Yeah. So we want to find out what we love doing most. And by the way, there's a test that I take. And if you want to, anyone who's listening to this and you want to DM me, I'll send you the link. Sally Hogshead has an amazing, it's not a personality test, but it is a self-test, and it lets you know based on what you report back. It lets you know how you're seen by others, not just your peers, but just in your industry in general. And it gave me some great words to really hold on to and drill down on. And
I would love it. If you give it to me later, we'll put it in the chapter.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. It's called How to Fascinate. I'll send out. So check the podcast notes. I'm excited to share this with you. I promise you, I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't take this test myself. And it's the first thing I do with anyone I work with, just because it works so well with me. And I've never had someone say, I don't get it. There's always some type of result that comes out of it.
That's amazing.
And that just helps you understand the words, so you can identify some of the vocabulary that you're searching for, because often we're looking for answers that we don't know the questions to. And it's hard to know the questions when you don't understand the amount of time that you have to work on a given project. So like you said earlier, there's only so much we can do. And I think there's only so much you can do now. So understanding what that course of action is, that's when we talk about consistency. That's putting your brand, consistency is moving your brand forward. If you feel consistent, if you feel like you're doing something again, here we are again. That's an amazing feeling. That means you've figured out how part of the machine works and you're able to use that part again. And you'll see in the strengths and weaknesses how that pivots you. It might keep you in the direction you want to be going in, and it might make you veer to, into your strength, which, hopefully is the experience that you're having out there.
And also you need to learn about take little by little and enjoy little success. Because like, for example, I just got named Forbes Next 1000, which was incredible. I didn't expect that. I tried, but I didn't expect that. And I didn't get here just from one day to the next. It was step by step. Like taking every podcast that someone will invite me, everywhere that anyone who wants to talk to me, I will talk to, anyone who will listen. And
that's amazing.
You need just to be aware of the journey, and that in my case, I learned at least that you cannot be alone. Alone is a very lonely place. And mostly when you're trying to do your own branding, you're always struggling. Is it right? I'm projecting the right message. I always recommend when we're talking about personal brand that you have a team behind you, even if it's, call it a coach, a best friend, whoever you're going to be trusting and keeping you consistent, that you are sending the right message over and over again.
Yeah, well, being creative, the act of being creative is a very sort of communal way of getting a message across. It's interactive. It's meant to be shared. So doing things in a silo and working by yourself may work, but will I don't know how it is. I want to say this in an inspiring way. I know. I want to say this. Well, for a great example is like what I've loved about Clubhouse, the live streaming audio app Clubhouse, is I first off, I found this awesome tribe of people that I love learning with. I don't know what we're going to learn. So like I went to college, I picked my classes based on what I wanted to learn. Now, as an adult, I get to pick what I learn based on who I'm learning with. And I love that. Because it's brought so much into my life. I just this week found out what the definition of the next generation, the alpha generation.
Yes.
Because they are the first generation born entirely in the new 21st century. So they're named after the first alphabet of the Greek, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, alpha. So, and I think they started like 2011, 2012 is where that's. So I didn't even know that had been established yet. And that piece of information is an important piece of information to have to marketers, to people with a business, to people who are selling TV shows. When information like that, comes out,
because they're consumers already.
Yeah, and that's the language that you use in sales. So you want to use a similar language to the people that
I have two kids, 15 and 17, and I learned so much from them, which is ridiculous. They use platforms that I do not use. Like, for example, they don't text message, they don't WhatsApp, they just Discord.
Yeah.
That for me is a completely new world, but for me as a marketer, it's really important to understand it.
Yeah, and they're constantly evolving, ever changing, and there's only going to be more and more. So having a strong personal brand on all of those platforms, it's really important, and that goes down to, you may decide some silly ways to show personal branding, I'll say, but effective, because it's anything we do consistent shows dedication and shows intention. So I've seen people always use lowercase letters. I know that it takes actually more effort to write in all lowercase than it does in sentence case lettering. And I think it's interesting when people take the time to, or when their name is always in caps is sort of taboo, obviously, because it's screaming and there's that piece. But I really enjoyed seeing, and also, social media has made our personal branding interesting. It's the digital way that it's made our personal branding interesting is there's now, 56 characters that we can associate with our name. So we now have the ability to put our name and other words or hashtags if we want them to be searchable.
Well, my name is LinkedIn. So long that my space is limiting. But I want to ask you something. So I love to give some tips and tricks to our audience. And like, for example, we gave this test, which I think is great. So what's next? How do you start your personal brand? Because a lot of people out there that they want to say, I want to do it. I want to be my brand. And so how do I do it?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is, if you're saying I want to do it and you're not, the first thing I would ask you to ask yourself is like, what's holding you back? So like, let's just figure out what that is. Usually there's some type of friction to create. So it takes too long for me to do hair and makeup and wardrobe. It takes too long for me to get the kids quiet and the dogs quiet. I don't have the right lighting. I don't have the right equipment. So there is real, hardware that helps the creative process, the same exact way as there is, software that helps, editing and the whole creating piece. So let's just assume that we know how we want to record. We know how we want to show up. One of the ways I like to sort of break the ice is to break the ice before we start recording. So like, don't let, hi everyone, how are you doing? This is Vinny. Don't let your intro to your show be the first time you're saying it. Like say it 4 or 5 times off air before, and say it out loud. Like you can't, if you're watching this, you can see that I'm moving my tongue and my cheeks, and I'm doing all of those things you hear about in acting class, or you see when they talk about, it really does. The muscles in your face tend to be very, very tight.
Never be unprepared.
So stretch. That's the thing. People, you think you're ready to run a sprint, but like being content creator is really more of a marathon. Even if it's a short race, you really want a nice steady rhythm. The last thing you want to do is, jump on, talk too fast, and no one can understand you because they're listening to you from their phone in a room with lots of, noise. I think knowing what you want to say, and being concise, but knowing what you want to say. I've hopped on air before and I've really had nothing that I wanted to say, and I found myself flailing, and I didn't like the experience, and I realized that I'm much better off when I know where I want to go. So I may say, I don't know what I want to talk about. I'm asking people to come up and say hi to me. Be careful what you're going to get. Yeah. But I also, work hard for my audience and the people that follow me. And
I always say that you need to always be prepared for the unexpected, because you never know what the other person is going to say, what's going to come up, what happened. But at the same time, you need to have some work done behind. You need to know who are you talking to, a little bit of background story. Never, and I did this before, just go, oh, I have a podcast. Oh, I went in and I was, okay, I'm blank. So I never do that anymore. I learned that at least I disconnect whatever I was doing before, a few minutes before, 10, 15 minutes. I go over all my information. I'm on my zone and I'm ready to talk and to give my full attention to my guests or my podcast or whatever I'm doing. If I'm doing a Facebook Live or whatever, my attention is there. Close all the other programs. Put your phone in mute. Because
it's so important.
That's not respectful to your audience, and audience notice that.
Yeah, and by the way, if you go back and watch it, you'll notice it too. It'll make you cringe, because part of that. So that's interesting, because that message comes up a lot when we talk about podcasting or being on camera. It's just being really present. But it's interesting that we have to give that note when people are being on camera. Like that's a note that I get. I tell myself a lot in life, and wherever I'm at is where I'm meant to be, and that helps because my phone goes off and my emails go off all day long, 24/7. And for the first 20 years of my career, I was a reality TV casting director, so that everyone's got my cell phone number, and I want them to stay in touch with me. That's why I do what I do, to connect opportunity and people and brands and talent. I love that piece, but it is all about collaborating. You had asked earlier, what are some more free gifts? I'd like to just start. Here's where I'd like to start for the people who are really at the beginning, or if you're ready for a reset. I would take one piece of paper. I would draw a line down it. And I don't want this on 2 pieces of paper or in front and back. I want them, side by side so you can compare. And on the left side of the paper, I'd like you to write your creative goals. And on the right side of your paper, I'd like you to write your financial goals. And those are 2 different, I want to be on television. I want to make money by being on television. 2 different goal types. And the reason I ask people to separate them is one, it gives clarity. So I can measure, not just only like the gains that you've had as a brand, but also some of the gaps that I think you're missing based on, the trajectory you want to go in. It also helps me prioritize. Like we said earlier, we can only do so much. It helps me prioritize what I'm doing now. And I'm always doing something now. I always have a now plan. I have an annualized now plan, and that lets me breathe to know that next month, I know what I'm diving into. I know what book I want to read. I know what podcast outside of my normal realms of podcasts I want brought into my life. I put energy into automating some of that energy and education into me so that I can focus on the now part. And by understanding your creative goals and your financial goals, first off, it separates them. They should not be compared so similar. Financial goals are, I made $1 million, and creative goals often are like, we spent $1 million.
Yeah.
We have no more budget. We hired the most amount of people. We were innovative in a field that didn't need innovation, and we created something we didn't know we needed. That's not financial goals. And now in this creator economy, or in social media, or in the present day and age that we're in, however you want to say it, people address and audit their creative and financial success, and often hold them to the same standards. And I want to point that out. They're two very different things.
It's the same thing that saying money brings you happiness.
Oh, yeah.
It's not. I mean, money won't bring you happiness. What will bring you happiness is things that you get through money.
Yeah. If you don't believe that, then look at what I did on Bravo for the last 10, 15 years with all the richest people in the world having shows. That necessarily was not happiness that they were showing, there. So no, money does not bring happiness for sure. And the branding piece, the personal branding, I look at it as a tool. It's a tool set. So like if I want to talk about singular personal brand ID. I can talk about ensemble branding. I cast, Housewives of Jersey, and there's lots of ensemble, The Hills and Laguna Beach and the Osbourne, like lots of ensemble shows. TRL was a show that I used to cast back in the day on MTV, and there was 4 or 5 different hosts, and I'm bringing that up because of what I got to do on TRL was bring out the best, the most unique piece of each of their personalities, whether it was Lala or Vanessa Lachey or Damien Fahey or Caduce. There was Susie Castillo. They all had something unique about them. And whether I got to do it with a color or with a hair texture, or the way that glasses were used, or the way that props or accessories were given, the personal branding piece is an extension. Also, I ask myself, and I did this even before, this conversation here, I specifically say, Vin, how do I want this audience who's listening to this? How do I want them to feel? I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I can feel so overwhelmed with the creative that goes on in his head. I know what that feels like. And oftentimes that's the number one thing that stops people from being successful, is just that feeling of being overwhelmed.
And it's overwhelming also because you feel very lonely.
Oh yeah, and you feel it, right? You're in the silo again. You feel like you've done something wrong, perhaps. You weren't trained to.
It's very hard to judge ourselves. It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do things for my clients that I can do it with my eye closed, but it's when it's my brand, it's like, am I seeing it right? Because we don't see ourselves how other people see us.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely true. Yeah, right. And sometimes we'll think, I don't deserve something. Like, so I part of building, and this sort of opens up another level to what we're talking about. Like, part of building a celebrity brand, and when I start using that word, what that means to me is a brand that's celebrated. So part of building a celebrity brand is winning awards. Celebrities win awards. Why? Because it helps them differentiate from each other. You here are, was it Forbes Next 1000?
Yeah.
A pretty big deal. The first generation of Forbes Next 1000s too. So the first of the first 1000, which is so cool. And those are little things that will differentiate you from future Forbes Next 1000s, is that you were the first of the first time.
Yeah, I mean, everything is unique. It's authority. You get authority in your space. That's why someone who wins an Oscar gets authority. And someone who wins an Emmy, whatever space you are, that's give you authority to your brand.
Yeah, they win authority. They also win visibility. They're also placed on a list that is often published and publicized.
I call that relevance.
Absolutely.
I always say that marketing is 2 things: authority and relevance.
Yeah.
People to know that you're the best at what you're doing, and relevance, people to find you.
Absolutely. And people love working with award-winning actors, directors. So there are hundreds of awards that are out there. If I'm giving away. I'll send you these before. I'm very excited to share this with you. Actually, I didn't think I was going to say I'm giving away so much, but please DM me. I have a list of about 80 of the podcasts digitally. I've done some work because I realize that a lot of people aren't submitting for lists for awards that they qualify for. I actually, in this process, realized most people don't know that for the Academy Awards, you have to pay to be like nominated. You have to pay to be in consideration. That's what thank you for your consideration means. So not only do you have to pay to be in the Academy, I like to thank the Academy. So not only do you pay the Academy, but each producer that's attached to the project that's being submitted has to pay a headcount fee. So I've realized
in every award. Just so you know, in most of the awards out there, unless it has a sponsor, you're gonna have to pay to be considered.
Oh yeah, Webbies, Tellies, the W3s, Communicator Awards. There are some great digital awards that are out there that are worth it. But it's important. I think it's important when awards and credits is important. It's important to take credit now that podcasts are starting to talk to more and more regular people. IMDb actually has changed how the credit system works. It used to be solely for actors and actresses and performers, and now you can be yourself on IMDb. So if you're on a podcast that's on IMDb, by the way, I don't know if this podcast is listed in IMDb, but not only could this podcast be listed as IMDb and you as the host and executive producer, but then I would be, a guest in your show, and that just lets TV bookers and
it's so
magazine publishers, find you. Like, I love the idea of relevance. This is a great refinement of what I was saying before. I really appreciate that. I like it.
You can use it anytime.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, before we go, I want to ask you the last question. And this is one I want to hear story because I love storytelling. And it's about a mistake that you made and that we can learn from it.
Ooh, that's a great one. A mistake that I've learned from. Well, I have a very technical job. Like, there's a lot of data transfer, and there's a lot, as creative of a job that I've had and have shared, like, a lot of my job is getting the right file and the right size to the right hands. And too many times I've seen projects, I've seen reels not hit the mark because of like you were saying, the inability for people to sort of see themselves. So there have been projects that I've been quick to not understand, in my limited space that I have, that I've passed on, or talent that I tried to hire that we couldn't get hired, or and I think back to how some of these projects could have left MTV. I think back to how many times we lost, almost lost, big shows like Wildin' Out on MTV. Almost, Nick pitched the show and MTV passed on it. Nick was dating Christina Milian at the time, and they took the winter break. They went and recorded. He invested in something. He recorded something and came back with tape to show the executives at MTV what he was talking about. And Christina Milian was like the first celebrity sort of, there's two celebrity teams that go head to head. And so it's not necessarily like a mistake that I've made, but it's a mistake we made, at the network, where we were given a second opportunity to look at our project. But we also, I realized in that moment, now I didn't do this because I was very junior at that time, but I see the executives, I remember when they passed on the project, they told him why, and he took those notes and he listened and he addressed them. So too many times I've seen no come in, and if someone wants to work with you, they'll go the distance to give you, like you said, this is where personal branding is different than business branding, because businesses really can't make mistakes, but people do. And that's the human part of it, and how you were bound, the institution you surround yourself with to allow yourself to make mistakes. Like, for me, I have to make mistakes. I'm constantly in new territories, but I make, good mistakes. I make some bad mistakes, but they're low risk, because I've learned, I've learned risk management, which is all about, energy management and time management. And without that, without time management, it's like nothing. So I think back to, so many opportunities I'm sure that could have, should have, and would have happened. But I'm happy to say that I've never looked back and thought something wasn't successful because I wasn't part of it. I'm happy to say that like all these projects live to their full potential, either way, one way or the other. And oftentimes I get looped in like season 2 or season 3 of something if I miss the first season. So there's always but that goes back to time.
Yep.
And that's
And
the
it needs to be the
multiplier.
right, it should need to be the right time for you too.
It
Sometimes
needs to be the right time.
yeah, sometimes it's just not. Thank you so much, Vinnie, for having coffee with me today. I really, really enjoy our conversation.
You're the best.
Everyone else, I see you guys next week at coffee number 5.